What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I'm your host, EJ Holland, and I will be answering all of your questions on tonight's show. So make sure to get in to the chat box, leave a question. Before we answer those, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. Get updates every time we drop a new update. So make sure to like this video, subscribe, and also subscribe to the Wolverine.com today using the special promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. If you want more insider information, head over there. You'll get everything I write that's behind the paywall using that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the questions. It is the Q&A show, and it looks like the early questions didn't disappear. Also, if you leave a super chat, you get to skip the line, and it looks like Daniel Rebane did leave a $1 super chat. So shout out to you, Daniel. That money goes directly to my travel budget so I can continue to see top recruits around the country. And I will be traveling this weekend and seeing a good one. So I'm excited about that. So make sure to leave the super chat, skip the line. And again, that money goes directly to my travel budget. But Daniel says, how big is it for Michigan to have both of their 2025 and 2026 quarterbacks locked in so early? And how does it help recruiting offensive skill positions, not just this cycle, but 26 and 27? Yeah, it's great. Michigan hasn't really had that really magnetic personality at the quarterback position, that's helped out as a peer recruiter since J.J. McCarthy. Jaden Denegal was a guy that was pretty quiet and lower rated. Alex Orji was a guy that signed on signing day. And then, Kendrick Bell was a little bit more of an athlete. And so Jaden Davis was very quiet. So, yeah, Michigan hasn't really had that, leader at the forefront of a class in a while. But I think Carter Smith's done a really nice job behind the scenes. He was all over the place here on Victor's weekend, helping out with guys like Andrew Olesh and Andrew Marsh and Hardy Watts. And so I think Carter's done a really good job behind the scenes. You might not see him post a ton on social media, but he's consistently texting all these guys and putting in a lot of work on visits. And then I think Brady Hart is a guy that's already respected around the country, and he's going to have a chance to really lead that 26 class because he's such an early commit. Carter committed in November, which was still fairly early. Brady Hart committed this month in June. So he has more than an entire year, basically a year and a half to recruit until the 2026 signing day. So, yeah, I think Hart's going to be fantastic. He's a guy that's, always smiling, just has a really energetic personality. He wants to help peer recruit. I actually texted him earlier today about Savion Hyder. He's working on Javian Mallory, who's another top running back target as well. So, Brady's already off to a great start doing some peer recruiting as well. And so, I think for both the end of the 2025 cycle as well as the entire 2026 cycle, it's awesome for Michigan to have two guys that want to help the Wolverines recruit and definitely are doing so behind the scenes. And I think you've seen Carter post a little bit on social media coming out of the weekend, and Brady's been involved on social media as well. So, yeah, both of these guys are fantastic leaders of their respective classes. All right, let's go back up to the top and start off with Stephen Lindsay, who is here at 11 a.m. So shout out to you, Stephen. And he says, what happened with Roy? So Michigan was the favorite to land 4-star defensive lineman Maxwell Roy out of Philadelphia. Now you see the change in the RPM with Ohio State having the lead there. I changed my prediction in favor of the Buckeyes. And, as a combination of things, I thought, Michigan was far and away the leader. And I can tell you that behind the scenes, Michigan had a ton of reason for optimism in this recruitment. But Ohio State, had always been kind of hot and cold on him. They made a push. They got him on campus for an OV. Historically, his high school, St. Joe Prep, is really Buckeye friendly. It obviously produced Marvin Harrison Jr. I believe the DC Knowles went to St. Joe Prep. So there's some deep ties there. There's already a couple of guys committed, and, they just historically have a good relationship there. I think Ohio State still has the edge over Michigan when it comes to the NIL aspect. And so, yeah, I think it was just a combination of things. And I personally, I probably think that Ohio State, and look, Maxwell Roy is a great player, so I don't want to be taken out of context, but I do think that Michigan, being the favorite to land Roy, and their evaluations from years past gave Ohio State a little bit more of a reason to push harder for Maxwell Roy. So, kind of a tough loss there for Michigan. It'll be interesting to see if they offer any more defensive line prospects this cycle. Stephen Lindsay back with another one. He says, who do you like in our wide receiver class? Or what do you think our wide receiver class will look like come signing day? So, Jacob Washington obviously committed. He fills the big bodied spot. Michigan's trending in the right direction for both Phillip Wright and Andrew Marsh. And that could be your 3-man class. Could they take a fourth? I think they could. They could potentially make room for Taz Williams and add another slot. They could potentially make room for another big body. I know they would, probably do that for a guy like Derek Meadows, who's a top 100 recruit, or Jerome Miles, who's really rising up the rankings and is expected to visit for the barbecue. So it'll be interesting to see if they take a fourth receiver, if those guys end up on, in the boat. But I would say, I feel comfortable saying that I think a class of Washington, Wright, and Marsh is likely, with the potential for a fourth. Stephen Lindsay back with another one. He says, what are our chances with Jordon Davison? When is he expected to commit? So I've heard that he's looking to commit by the end of the week. I don't know, man. That one's been such a twist and turn recruitment, and there's so much going on behind the scenes that we haven't been able to report. And I'm just really apathetic towards that recruitment. Ohio State has the lead on the RPM, but it seems like they've dropped off, which has opened the door for Michigan. However, our Steve Wilfong put in a prediction for Oregon, and I would probably lean that way. But, it just seems like his stock has dropped off. And again, there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes. I do think Michigan would take him, if he called Tony Alford and said, I'm going to commit and announce it. I think they would say yes, but I don't know, man. Not a fan of this recruitment. Let's go down to John A. Schultz. And he says, is Michigan starting to give recruits a little pay-for-play upfront money? And if they're doing so now, why the heck didn't they start this earlier with Marquise Davis? Well, it's still a process, work in progress and a process. So I think that right now they aren't giving, recruits bags of cash on official visits or anything like that. But they are putting plans together to create certain packages for high-level recruits, guys like an Andrew Marsh or a Shamari Earls. Again, it's a process at a place like Michigan, where we've heard soon for however many years it's been already, 2 years. It's a process in terms of getting everybody to come together to agree on a plan for NIL recruiting. There's politics involved at a place like Michigan that's always done transformational over transactional. But I don't think they're just handing out cash. And, the recent lands, you look at Donovan Johnson, Kayden Strayhorn, Jacob Washington, Chase Taylor. None of these recruitments were NIL recruitments. So it's not like we're seeing them, win recruitments because, NIL is here and they are doing pay for play. Like, even if they land, or like Kainoa Winston was not an NIL recruitment despite his high ranking. Even if they land Andrew Olesh, same thing as Winston, not an NIL recruitment, even though he's ranked fairly high. So, we haven't seen the direct results of any changes with the NIL philosophy, but I know they are taking steps in the right direction. John A. Schultz says, EJ, the corner board is a mess, especially if Earls ends up at Georgia. What are the options going forward? Yeah, it's tough sledding there right now. Obviously, Shamari Earls is the guy on the corner board. I mean, he's the one they want the most. Obviously, flipping him from South Carolina. Yeah, I'm not really that concerned about South Carolina as much as I am about Georgia. You know, Georgia hosted him for an official visit over the weekend and really moved the needle. And I think that, you know, I think going head to head with the Bulldogs is always tough. With that said, you know, he had a great visit to Michigan earlier this month, has really connected well with new secondary coach Lamar Morgan. I do think he'll probably flip from South Carolina, though he's supposed to visit there for their recruiting event in July. But again, I think Georgia being in the picture and really pushing for him is obviously scary. So, you know, a name to really know on the cornerback board is Jaden Sanders out of Texas. He visited last week on an unofficial. They're trying to get him back on campus for the barbecue at the big house. They're still working on Cade Phillips, who's actually listed as a safety, but he's an on 300 prospect down in Texas that they like as a corner. You know, they're still working on some guys that are committed elsewhere. They've been in contact with Jabri Antoine, who recently decommitted from LSU, but with Miami and Florida State being options there, you know, that one's going to be an uphill battle. So I think we're going to have to wait and see if more names pop up, if Michigan can create some real movement for some of these guys that are committed elsewhere. So yeah, it's kind of wait and see, but I would say Earls and Sanders are the primary names to really know on that corner board right now. G Boulder says, whatever happened to Chris Ewald and DJ Pickett? I haven't heard those names in a while. You know, both of those guys were very close to Steve Clinkscale. And when Clinkscale left, I think that, you know, that kind of put a dent into those recruitments. And they never really gave Lamar Morgan a fair shake. And also both of those have kind of turned into bits of NIL battles. So, yeah, I don't think they're options for Michigan at all. John A. Schultz says, EJ, in terms of rankings, what is the ceiling for this class? Which players could rise this season and push that ranking higher? You know, it really just depends on some of these key battles that should be solved before the start of the season. You know, if they're able to go on a magical run and get Olesh and Andrew Babalola, and they, you know, surprise and get DJ Sanders or somebody like that along the defensive line, if they flip Earls, if they get Marco Jones, if they get Owusu Boateng, like, yeah, I mean, all of those things could line up. And also, I know you guys have commented on the text alerts, like being loud. I don't know how to turn them off on my laptop. So if you can tell me how to do that, I will gladly do it. It's not my phone going off, it's the laptop. But anyway, yeah, I mean, if everything falls into the right place, they could obviously have a top 10 class, but, you know, that's very wishful thinking. I think, you know, based on the last two classes, they've obviously finished 15 and 18 respectively. So, you know, I think there's the potential to finish a little higher than that, maybe between 10 and 15 would be a good, you know, realistic finish, I would say. You know, if they can finish 12, that would be great, especially considering how slow they started. John A. Schultz says, EJ, you have one meal left on earth. What do you choose? I feel like everybody would just say like, oh, I want a ribeye or something. But for me, you guys know I'm from Texas, and I'm actually not going to say barbecue. But if you go down to Texas, this isn't like the Cracker Barrel version. Like, you know, that's kind of trash. If you go down to Texas and you get a legitimate chicken fried steak, that's my go-to. I know so a lot of people don't like that, but I love chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, cream corn. So yeah, if I'm on death row, that's definitely what I'm choosing. A big chicken fried steak, you know, bunch of gravy, cream corn, mashed potatoes. I'm still true to my Texas roots there. Butter XO says, is Michigan in good position for Andrew Babalola, Shamari, Earls. If they can't get either of them, what are the other cornerback and offensive tackle options? So, we kind of covered Earls and corner recruiting. With offensive tackles. I don't know, man. Look, Andrew Babalola right now, Stanford's the obvious favorite here on the On3 recruiting prediction machine, as you can see on the screen, 85.3% chance of landing him. Now, Michigan has made it interesting. They had a really positive official visit. Our Steve Wilfong has said that Michigan has picked up steam. So maybe they can pull it off. But right now, I would still probably give the slight edge to Stanford. There's been no movement, on my end that's made me say, okay, I'm getting really optimistic about Babalola, but there is a chance there. If Michigan misses out on Andrew Babalola, then I don't know what other tackles are even, going to be out there. If they land Hardy Watts, that's someone they've talked to about playing the tackle position. Originally Michigan only wanted 3 offensive linemen in this class. And if they get Watts, that's 3. They already have Strayhorn committed and Avery Gash committed as well. Now, Eli Kalinivaloa is still out there, but he's a 2027 because he's taking a 2-year mission. But yeah, Hardy Watts would probably be the candidate to be the tackle in this class. We do have a super chat, and it comes from Rocky Furha. And my producer, Megan, can you help me pull this up because it's not pulling up? Okay. He says, big fan from the Furha family from TikTok and YouTube. Over 30 million followers across all platforms. Keep killing it, my man. All right. No, I appreciate that. I guess we'll have to check out Rocky's. I personally don't have a TikTok. I feel like I'm getting too old for that, but we'll definitely check out the YouTube show. But if there are some Gen Zs in the chat box, make sure to head over to Rocky's TikTok and check him out, I guess. Appreciate that super chat from Rocky. Let's go back up to Noah K. And he says, what is your prediction for Michigan's safety and linebacker class? Well, they're only taking 2 linebackers. They would make room for 3, obviously, if both Boateng and Archie want in. But really, there are only 4 names on the linebacker board. One is already committed, Chase Taylor. Just mentioned Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. Kamar Archie is the other one, and then Elijah Melendez is the last one. Now, Melendez is committed to Miami, and he's kind of all over the place on social media. So I think that one's going to be tough. So it really comes down to Owusu-Boateng and Kamar Archie. I don't think they'll get both, but I could see them getting one. So, I would say maybe one of Owusu-Boateng or Kamar Archie. And look, I know everybody's been obsessed with all the social media posts from Boateng, but Kamar Archie is a great prospect. He's, as you guys know, if you watch the show, he's one of my favorite recruits in the class. He fits that Michigan mold, and I think he's really underrated by the services. So I'd love to see Archie end up in the class. So I think it'll be either or, and Chase Taylor as the linebackers. Safety's where it gets interesting, right? Because you're in it for 3 top 100 guys: JaDon, Blair, Ivan Taylor, Jordan Young. They all made official visits this summer. Now, JaDon Blair's trending to Notre Dame. So, for the purpose of this question, let's just say he ends up there. That would put together a very crowded room for Notre Dame. They already have several DBs committed. That could open the door for Michigan to potentially land Ivan Taylor. Now, the thing about Ivan Taylor is he's, also considering Alabama, and there's some optimism coming out of Tuscaloosa that he could flip there. So say they miss out on Ivan Taylor, he goes to Alabama. And you have Jordan Young, who was just on campus for an official visit. So with Jordan Young, Michigan's in his top 4, along with Clemson, Florida State, and NC State. And there could be some other options that pop up in the fall, because the thing about Jordan Young is he's not planning to make any type of decision until October. So that puts you in a little bit of a bind. Now, let's say they are not able to get Jordan Young. You look at the On3 recruiting prediction machine, it points Clemson, and I would probably still give Clemson the edge coming out of official visits. So if you're not able to get any of those 3 elites, where do you go from there? Who knows? It could be anybody. So yeah, right now I would say that those are the names to know on the safety board, but all of them are very, very competitive recruitments. And, it'll be interesting to see how Michigan finishes out there. Joseph Grimaldi says, if we do miss out on Maxwell Roy, what does our defensive tackle board look like? We are thin at the position after Graham and Grant graduate. What about the 26 class? Yeah. Esposito has, obviously got off to a late start. I'm talking Lou Esposito, Michigan's new defensive line coach. He was the last assistant to be hired because if you remember, they hired Greg Scruggs, and obviously he had the incident where he was dismissed from the program. So he hasn't really started recruiting a ton of 2026s yet. I expect him to do that here during the dead period. In this class right now, you could see him maybe offer a couple of guys here if Roy does go off the board as expected. The main name to know right now along the defensive line, and the only name to know in terms of non-edge guys, because Marco Jones, Julius Hawley, those are edge guys. In terms of actual defensive linemen, it's just DJ Sanders. Texas had a really good official visit with DJ Sanders, and they have the lead in that recruitment. So Michigan needs Sanders to wait until the fall, which was his initial timeline. And if he does wait until the fall, that's great news for Michigan because the family has told me they're planning to be back in Ann Arbor for the barbecue at the Big House. Now, I know you see Texas A&M on your screen having the lead for Sanders on the odd 3 RPM. The Aggies have fallen off a bit, and it seems like Texas has emerged as a favorite, and Michigan might actually be the biggest threat. So, it'll be fascinating to see if Sanders makes a decision now or later. Again, Michigan really needs him to wait it out, but we're just going to have to, kind of wait and see if Esposito expands the board here in July. Stephen Lindsay says, do you think we get Julius Hawley or Marco Jones at edge? Anybody else at edge that we're in good position for? Those are the guys, and Michigan's cautiously optimistic with both. If they miss on both, then who knows where they really go from there. Marion Dye is still on the board, but seems very unlikely. Julius Hawley's announcing on Saturday. There have been no predictions made there, so we're kind of just in wait and see mode. Marco Jones is set to make his decision on July 2nd. Also, no predictions going in yet. So again, wait and see mode. I don't think either prospect has informed coaching staffs of their decision. That's why things are very quiet with them, as we're just literally days away from both of their decisions. So, I think Michigan's right there for both. I would say Michigan's top 3 for both. But it's tough for me to really make a pick on either or really tell you that I'm leaning one way or the other on either. I think both of them are very highly competitive recruitments that are coming down to the wire. And I can tell you that Esposito is pushing hard for both. Borge Warner says, what DTs are we in on? We just got to that question. So let's go down to Tyson Smith. He says, when is Olesh committing and is he as good as Colston Loveland? I think Olesh could be as good as Colston Loveland. He actually got that comparison throughout the weekend. He needs to add weight and, show what he can do as an inline blocker. But as a pure pass catcher, you'd be hard pressed to find a better tight end in the country than Andrew Olesh, man. He spends a lot of time in the slot and out wide, and he's a difference maker as a pass catcher. And I think he would be a fantastic fit for Michigan's offense. You see Michigan has the lead on the recruiting prediction machine, 86.1% chance of landing him. I have a prediction in for Michigan. I feel confident about that. Alabama's still trying to make a run here. I don't think Penn State is much of a factor anymore after having the lead for the majority of the cycle. I don't think Florida is much of a factor here either. We'll see if Bama is able to make a late run, but I really give the edge to Michigan. I feel good about my pick. And as far as a decision timeline, I think Olesh was originally planning for like July 1st or 2nd, somewhere around there. So you could potentially see him make a decision next week. And again, I still really like Michigan. The official visit went really well. He has a great bond with Steve Casula, and he really does see himself as that next Colston Loveland. Tyson Smith says, Are we keeping Bobby Kanka? He looks like he should play for Ball State. Well, that's not very nice. But look, I'm not super high on Kanka either, but I do think that he could be a guy that provides some depth and maybe makes an impact as a late career guy. With Maxwell Roy heading off to Ohio State, presumably. I think it gives Michigan more of a push to keep Kanka. And from everything I was able to gather this weekend, I think he will remain as part of the class. So, he's a high floor kid, doesn't offer a ton of athleticism, but, he's a big kid that could play the three technique and, again, be a good depth piece. I mean, Mike Elston, Michigan's former D-line coach, was a really good evaluator, and he liked Kanka. I just think he shares a lot of the same similarities as Ted Hammond and Brooks Barr. So you're not getting, any type of, athleticism or difference maker. You're getting a depth piece that's going to buy into the program, put on his hard hat, and come to work, and all the other, the little sayings that people use for these types of hardworking prospects. Tyson Smith says, if you could hang out with one coach for a day, who would it be? Ron Bellamy. Probably because I know Bellamy well. Remember, he was the head coach at West Bloomfield during the Donovan Edwards recruitment, which was one of the first big recruitments I covered on the Michigan beat. And also, Bellamy is from New Orleans. So if I were to hang out with Bellamy for a day, it would be his hometown, and then we'd just enjoy a bunch of great food, obviously. But no, Bellamy has a great personality. He's a really good dude as well. I always root for Bellamy to do well as a coach and as a recruiter. And like I said, you can't beat the New Orleans food, man. We go out there, get some red beans and rice, get some beignets, be great. We have a great time. Daniel Rebane says, hey, EJ, I've heard about the barbecue at the Big House. How big is that event in terms of recruiting? And how big of a miss will it be with the new extended dead period? Yeah, so if you guys didn't see the rule change yesterday, the NCAA has implemented a month-long dead period in July. So the barbecue at the Big House will not happen in July after this year. When it'll happen, who knows? I'm sure they'll try to keep the event, but you have to keep in mind that August is usually the majority of August, or maybe all of August this cycle is supposed to be a dead period. I don't know if they're changing that now that July is a dead period, but if August isn't a dead period, then I would assume that they move it to August. If it is a dead period, then you kind of have tougher options because, June's more centered on official visits. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge weekend, and I'd like to see them find a way to keep it around, whether they move it to a spring barbecue or if August again isn't a dead period. Obviously it'll be easy to segue it there. Daniel Rebane says, oh no, we answered that on the super chat. Again, appreciate Daniel for doing that. He had another question. He says, if Moore and Bellamy are able to land Marsh and Wright along with Washington, who they have already, will they focus on trying to land another tall receiver and take a fourth receiver? Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. I still think they end up recruiting Derek Meadows and Jerome Miles. Miles is supposed to come in for the barbecue in July. Meadows is taking his time. So, I think both will be tough recruitments to win, but they'll definitely keep trying there. Juju says, thoughts on Marco Jones? I'm hearing it's a Texas-Michigan battle, and his USC visit was underwhelming. Yeah, I still wouldn't count out USC. He has some ties there. I know those around the Texas program feel pretty optimistic. I know those around the Michigan program are cautiously optimistic as well. I don't have a real read one way or the other. That's why I haven't made a prediction. I can just say that Michigan is definitely in that top 3 for him. And I would, I would say Michigan has a legitimate chance here. And Texas A&M is another school still trying. Just wanted to throw that out as well. Juju says, what combination would you want? Taz, Washington, Marsh, or Wright, Washington, Marsh? That's a good question. I probably like Taz a little better as a recruit than Wright right now. But I think having Andrew Marsh kind of negates that, and I would rather take a chance on Wright because he has game-changing speed. I know Wright is not as polished of a prospect as Taz Williams, but 10.46, which is, I believe, is PR time in the 100 meter. You can't teach that type of speed. If Bellamy's able to coach him up as an actual receiver, that's game-changing speed. That's something that, Taz doesn't have. So, I already have a guy like Taz in Marsh, so I'd rather have the speedster with him in Philip Wright. So I'd go with the latter combination. Butter XO says, hey, as a huge Mexican boxing fan, what are your thoughts on the Ryan Garcia ban? I don't know. I think it's pretty dumb. Obviously he had some in his system, but it seemed like tainted supplements. So I don't know. I probably would have given him 6 months, but a year layoff's not really that big of a deal for boxers anyway. You just saw Tank come back from a year layoff. So I'm sure we'll see him next year. KS says, what really happened with Mike Hart? I understand you can't share specific details, but was it health related, job related? Haven't seen any reason for him not returning. Honestly, I really don't know the true specifics. Obviously, I wasn't a fan of his recruiting, and he did have some health issues. And, I don't know what the exact reason for them saying it's time to move on was, but I think Tony Alford has done a great job as a replacement on the recruiting trail. Jackson Ross says, when is Marsh committing? So he was originally set to commit on Veterans Day in November, but he is looking to move up his timeline to August, and he will be back for the barbecue at the Big House. Michigan has the lead there on the On3 recruiting prediction machine after his OV this weekend. How do I rate Charles Woodson? Well, I guess Charles Woodson would be a 5-star. I wasn't old enough to rate Charles Woodson as a recruit. I guess when Charles Woodson was a recruit, I would have been like 3 years old or something. So didn't have a rating, but I'm assuming it was a 5-star. Juju says, any updates on Edge Holiday? I think he means Julius Holly. And hearing nothing from any schools as his decision date is in 3 days. Yeah, he hasn't informed any schools yet. I know he's set to make his decision here on Saturday. Like I said, Michigan is definitely right up there. So, we'll see what kind of buzz we get in the next 24 to 48 hours on him. Georgia's the leader on the On3 RPM, but still kind of unclear if the Bulldogs are going to push. We have more than 200 viewers right now, and we are running low on time. So all 207 of you that are watching live, make sure to like this video. We have 200 people watching. This show is free, so the least you can do is take 1 second to hit that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also, if you're not subscribed to the Wolverine.com, use the promo code UM1 specifically for our YouTube members. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. All right, let's go down to Henry Kardorsky. He says, what's better, pineapple pizza or those weird Notre Dame fans? Pineapple pizza, if you put some pepperoni and jalapeno on that, it's pretty good. I never really liked jalapeno. I mean, I never really liked pineapple on my pizza, but my wife enjoys it. And so you get the right type of, spice, sweet mixture if you get a good pepperoni, jalapeno, and pineapple pizza. So obviously I would go with that. Q Storm says, what is Michigan's chances with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng? Well, he dropped his top 5 today, which was not really any type of news at all. But Michigan definitely moved up after the visit. They're a legitimate contender. The thing with Owusu-Boateng is he has no true decision timeline. Notre Dame's the favorite on the RPM with a 31.7% chance of landing him. His half-brother played there. So, there's a direct tie. But I think he really enjoyed the Michigan visit. He really bonded well with Wink Martindale and Brian Jean Mary. He sees himself as a scheme fit. Michigan checked a lot of boxes for him. It's all about, when will he make a decision? The sooner he makes a decision, I think the better for Michigan. But if this one goes longer and that visit high wears off, then I think it becomes a little tougher. But they are right up there with Notre Dame right now. Enlay Wu says, EJ, in your evaluation, who are the candidates among the prospects that will boost their ranking or trending down? That's a good question. As far as commits, I think Carter Smith will have a chance to really boost his ranking. Michigan's quarterback commit, obviously winning Florida Gatorade Player of the Year last year, is a dynamic playmaker with his legs, but he's really put in a lot of work to polish up as a passer. So if he's able to show the offseason work on the field on Friday nights, I think he could be in for a boost. I mean, he's ranked outside of the top 200 right now. 24/7 still has him as a 3-star. So I could easily see him moving up the rankings if he has another big season and shows some improvements as a pure passer. Another guy that I think could move up the rankings is a new running back commit, Donovan Johnson. With Donovan Johnson, he's a guy that just hasn't played a lot of football the last 2 years. He had a huge freshman season, then kind of rotated in at IMG as a sophomore, and then as a junior had a torn ACL. So just not a big sample size with Donovan Johnson. But if he, if he comes back and is really healthy and he puts together a great season at IMG Academy, you could see him shoot back up the rankings. Remember, Donovan, after his freshman year, was considered a potential 5-star, potential top 100 prospect. So really interested to see how he looks this fall. In terms of who could drop in the rankings, I feel bad because Tyson Smith was mean to him. But Bobby Kanka, I think, still has a 4-star ranking. That's very high for him. I think he's a 3-star level kid. 2 services have him as a 3-star. The other 2 have him as a 4-star. I definitely would grade him as a 3-star prospect. So, he would probably be my candidate to drop in the rankings. I mean, there's kind of a reason Michigan was, kind of uncleared there. Let's go down to KSal29. He says, how do you feel about the current quarterback room and who are you leaning towards? Obviously I pay more attention to recruiting than I do to the team. I'm partial to Alex Orji, so I'm really rooting for him to be the guy. I think if you really want to safe take, you can go with Tuttle or Warren, but I'm cheering for Orji, so we'll see how that shakes out. Adam T says, EJ, are you a bit concerned about DB and D line recruiting since we missed on Roy? Yeah, a little concerned. I would love to see them land DJ Sanders. I'd love to see them close with one of Holly or Marco Jones because, after those names, there aren't any names. So it could end up being some late risers or some guys they try to flip. And, DB, like I said earlier, if they miss on those elite safety targets and they're not able to flip Earls, that puts them in a bit of a predicament on the back end. So, yeah, definitely some concern as we get out of official visit season. I think both Esposito and Lamar Morgan need to close on at least a couple of their top targets there. Butter XO says, how good is 2027 quarterback Trae Taylor compared to the current quarterback commits and his peers in the 27 class? It's tough to grade quarterbacks this early. Like 2027 is so far away. When Jordon Davison, was 2 years before his actual signing day, he was ranked as like a 5-star prospect. And obviously you saw him continuously drop in the rankings. Some kids peak earlier than others. I really like Trae. I think he's very advanced technically. He hit a nice little growth spurt, is now up to 6'2". Still needs to fill out his frame and develop physically, but he shows all the right traits early on. It's just tough to grade these guys super early. Henry Kardorsky says, EJ, Chad Simmons and Steve Wilfong seem close to favoring Michigan over Stanford for Babalola, but kept the Cardinal ahead for now. What does need to do to end up with him on the board? Just continuing to sell the offensive line production and the better football. The academics are a big reason he's leaning towards Stanford. Michigan obviously offers an elite education as well, but the big advantage they have is the football side. So just pushing the football side. All right, guys, we're going to go rapid fire since we are over time. Let's go ahead and start off with that with Go Blue 81. He says, EJ, are you and Brady Hart good? Heard on Menace to Sports that he may have an issue with a tweet and told you to delete it. They're pro Ohio State, so wanted to know that it is true straight from you. No, Brady's good. What happened was I put out that tweet where he said that the culture at Michigan was, essentially better than the culture at Ohio State, and that was a big reason he committed. But Brady just, he called me that night and he said, I think he thought it was funny, but he said he wanted to delete it just out of respect for the rivalry. He wants to show what he can do on the field, and just out of respect to the Ohio State coaches that offered him the same day he committed. It was just such a big part of the storyline, committing right after getting the Ohio State offer on the way to the Columbus airport. But me and Brady are good. We had that great Zoom call after that whole situation happened here on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked out my Q&A with Brady Hart, definitely check it out. We tried to avoid everything Ohio State on that Q&A. And I had a great call with his parents last night, actually. It was about 20 minutes. So I'll have that interview up on the Wolverine.com. But I think Brady's just a really good kid, and he kind of got overwhelmed by all the comments and stuff on social media. Obviously, I'm used to it, but he's not. And I think he's just such a nice, genuine kid that he wanted to stay respectful of everything. Henry Kardorski says, oh, yeah, we are supposed to be doing rapid fire. All right. Henry Cardor, we don't want to keep our producer here all night. So let's start off with Henry Kardorski. He says, if Watts commits to Michigan, will Michigan stop recruiting offensive linemen besides Babalola, or will they keep looking for other offensive tackles? Tough to say, but they'll probably just focus on Babalola. Where are we with Shekai Mills-Knight? I don't really think that there's too much there anymore with Michigan taking Donovan. Who is the next top target? Jared Goff. Oh, I like the cat. I'm not sure who the next, I don't know what you mean by next top target. If you mean by next commit, definitely keep an eye on Philip Wright, could decide at any time. And then Hardy Watts making his decision on Monday, Julius Hawley making his decision on Saturday. Those are some names to know. KS says, do we get Earls to flip? It's a tough battle between Michigan and Georgia. I think he will flip from South Carolina. Whether it is to Michigan or Georgia obviously remains to be seen. What about defensive tackle recruits? We kind of covered that, really focus on DJ Sanders for now. Hayden Redfro says, how many more DBs do you expect us to take? Obviously, they have Winston committed right now as more of a nickel. I think they are looking to take 3 more. We'll see if that ends up happening. Stephen Lindsay says, what do you think the offensive line class looks like this year? I think it'll be Hardy Watts, Avery Gash, and Kayden Strayhorn, and potentially Babalola, and that's pretty much it. They could add Colin Valoa, but again, he's a 2-year mission kid, so technically a 2027. Look at Cameron Clark giving me advice. Go into my message application and just turn it off. Well, I should have thought of that. Apparently, I'm just dumb. Corey G says, I want to give you props and say much respect for what you do with the Jamaican flag. Jamaica's playing right now, I think, or they're just finishing up. I didn't get to catch that game. Chicken fried steak from Cheddar's, get out of here. You need to go to Texas and have a real one. David says, EJ, if you could take either Ivan Taylor or JaDon Blair, who would you pick? I have JaDon Blair graded higher. He's the bigger, more fascinating, longer, rangier target. Nicholas Austin says, is Michigan going to take more defensive linemen? Haven't heard anything about DJ Sanders. Yeah, the plan is to get him back for the barbecue. Texas has built up some steam with him. So, if he waits to commit, he is the guy. Ty Fires says, does Brady Hart choose the number 10 or 20? I don't know what he's going to end up choosing, to be honest. It would be interesting to see if he chooses 10 or even 12. D McQueen says, who do you like for the wide receivers in 2026? My mind's not even on 2026 right now, with so much that's happened with the 25s. I mean, I can't even think of really a lot of top guys off the top of my head. I mean, one that I really like is Dysere Carter. He's a top 100 prospect here in Virginia. He's actually a teammate of Savion Hyder. They're looking to get him up for the barbecue. Bellamy stays recruiting hard down in Texas. Guys like Jalen Pyle, who just visited not too long ago, is one to know. Thomas Ackerson says, why did they drop DeWayne Galloway off the board? Not the skill set Morgan is looking for. He had some moving parts. Thomas Ackerson said, would you compare Kainoa Winston to a more recent player like Buda Baker? I see a lot of similarities in their game. Yeah, definitely. I think Kainoa is that true nickel. You know what you're getting from him. High floor player, plays, like a straight up missile, very physical, instinctual player. Not the tallest guy in the world, but plays bigger than his size. Wolverine Nation says, "Hey EJ, what's your opinion on Kayden Strayhorn? Did Michigan State not really want him? I don't know. That was a really weird situation. Oh, look, another cat wearing a Michigan hat. This guy's my favorite guy now. Yeah, I don't know. That was kind of a weird situation. They kind of stopped recruiting him once he started blowing up with bigger offers. And like I've said before, I've always felt like Kayden wanted to end up at Michigan. So I think he ended up at the place he wanted to be. Adam T says, EJ, is the Wolverine the best beat you've been on overall? How do you like Wolverine fans? Definitely love Michigan fans. Obviously, there was a bit of a spat with some, faction of the fan base with that whole Jordon Davison situation and the loyal followers of the donut connoisseur Sam Webb. But other than that, it's been great. It is my favorite beat. I've been on this beat longer than I was on Texas. Obviously, I love the Texas beat as well. And yeah, Notre Dame was definitely trash. William Bastion says, what are your thoughts on Andrew Babalola as a player? Do you think he deserves a top 20 ranking? Honestly, I have not really sat down and watched him that in depth, which is probably something I need to do. Zach handled a lot of the media stuff with Andrew Babalola, but he's obviously a 5-star for a reason, and he's really the only true tackle on Michigan's board. Is DJ Pickett still a goner? Yes, he is still a goner. Is there a possibility we take 4 wide receivers? Yes, there is. That's something they're discussing. Looking forward to with Jordon Davison, Carter Smith, and Brady Hart in the mix. Do you think we will have a problem with satisfying all 3 with playing time? Probably. I think Carter and Brady are better than Jordon, so that's pretty much my opinion on it. Corey G says, why do they rate some of these players so low when their tape shows better? Because it's not just all about tape. It's seeing these guys in person as well, seeing what their ceiling is, what their athleticism is, how they project to the college game. There's a lot that just goes into evaluation. Tim Lanke says, if Babalola commits, will Michigan end with a top 10 recruiting class? It really depends on who else they get, but I wouldn't rule it out. And Wu says, could you share a bit of behind the scenes on Jordon Davison? There's just a lot of people in his ear, a lot of NIL talk. I mean, it's just a tough situation to report on right now. Tim Lanke says, EJ, do you think Ohio State overpays recruits when going up for Michigan for a kid just to basically say we don't lose to Michigan? That may be. I mean, they might have done it a little bit here with Maxwell Roy or stopping Quincy from making his official visit, but I guess they have the money to do it. Who's the second safety in the 25 class? Like I said earlier, the names to know are Ivan Taylor, Jordan Young, JaDon, Blair. If Michigan misses on those guys, who knows? It could be, it could be Alex Graham. Is Michigan still in it for Alex Graham? Yeah. Graham, 4-star Colorado commit. He visited here recently. I had an update on him over at the Wolverine.com. And yeah, I think that Michigan is definitely in it. If they push hard, I think that he could be a flip guy, but he's had a lot of injury issues over the last couple of years. So I just want to, I think they want to see, how he does this season. Moose says, and this is the last question. So shout out to Moose. And he says, EJ, I've heard from Tom Loy and Steve Wilfong that Michigan have gained some ground. Is that true? And what do you think our chances are of landing him? I think he's talking about Babalola, which he corrects himself later. Yeah, I would side with Steve here. I think Michigan's closed the gap, but I would still give the edge a little bit to Stanford. And Jason Drabant says, EJ, who's your next commit prediction? Like I said earlier, I'd definitely keep an eye on Philip Wright. He's a guy that could announce anytime soon. Andrew Olesh could announce, anytime soon. Hardy Watts is set to commit on Monday. Julius Hawley set to commit on Saturday. So those are some names to know that are announcing here in the next, few days. Not to say that Olesh and Wright are definitely doing it, but the possibility is there with both. All right, that is my time, guys. I appreciate you all for joining me. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and also subscribe to the Wolverine.com. Use that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months. And I will see you guys next week.